What's up YouTube? I'm Valentin the Man, and this is a Gore review of Ryse, Son of Rome. Ryse, Son of Rome is a slasher action game by Crytek. The overwhelming critical response for it was praising the visuals, but criticizing the lacking gameplay. And after playing Ryse for some time, I absolutely agree. The looks are beautiful, but the gameplay is not very exciting. It's a corridor slasher, you don't have much room for maneuver, but most importantly, the combat is very limited. However, the game did catch my attention with the emphasis on brutality in combat, so the question is, how gory is Ryse, Son of Rome, and can the gore be at least somewhat of a redeemer? Let's find out. I'll be reviewing every aspect of the game's gore effects, and the score will be set based on 4 categories: body damage, environment, animations and sounds, the feel. Each limb has 1 point of amputation, and that's all the dismemberment. In my playthrough of the game, I haven't seen a single beheading happen in combat. As you can see, it's a clean cut, which makes sense taking the process into account, but I do think that there is room for some spilling from the wound that could stain the characters themselves, both the amputee and whoever stands close enough. During combat you will see the characters get cut and bleed from those wounds. It actually looks awesome. Seeing a character with multiple bloody slice wounds during the close-ups in the executions feels satisfying as hell. The issue I found with those wounds is that clothes and accessories won't get damaged or get stained in blood. In other words, if you slice shirtless characters, you will see every cut you make, but if they're wearing something, you will see no response on their clothing. Things are different with the wounds you will see on executions. The big issue with those is that they look very mild. It's usually a small slice with little, if any, blood coming out, and that's pretty odd. The executions are supposed to be the most brutal part of the combat, yet the body damage looks very uninteresting. You're slicing throats, and the result is a small scratch. The other issues with the execution wounds is that they sometimes just won't work, and you have the clothes issue I mentioned previously. However, the biggest problem with both types of wounds is that they disappear shortly after the character dies. One of the biggest immersion breakers for me has always been this miraculous healing thing. Unless you're playing as or fighting Wolverine, you should not be seeing wounds disappear. As for the blunt damage, there isn't any. A shield or a boot to the face will have absolutely no visual response. It's a major miss out. A few gory variations for some facial deformation would be more than enough. As for the player deaths, it's a short, unexciting animation with no body damage whatsoever. That's disappointing. I definitely want to see gory executions done by enemies if I as a player screw up. The game also features boss fights, which are absolutely pointless in my opinion, and here's why. In most of the Gore reviews, I'm heavily criticizing the bigger characters in the game. The idea behind them is usually upping the difficulty at the expense of the visual response. Those characters provide a harder fight, but they're also much less responsive than your average grunts. That's mostly not the case in Ryse. The bigger characters are awesome. They take a reasonable amount of damage, and as I mentioned previously, seeing them get covered in bleeding slice wounds feels great. So, when you get a boss character that shows absolutely no body damage and can take a ridiculous amount of hits, I genuinely don't get the point of that. Blood will stain the environment on impact, and you'll be seeing blood dripping off wounded characters. Every time you will see a blood spilling effect, you will also be seeing a blood stain that is more or less proportional. And while it doesn't work perfectly, it still is much better than most games I reviewed. This actually functional spilling, along with the blood dripping effect, make fights in clean environments to be an absolute pleasure. However, the environment aspect has 2 major issues. The first one is that there are no blood pools for dead characters. You will see the spillage when you slice them, you will watch them bleed, but as soon as the enemy dies you will see nothing. The second one is that the mass shortly disappears. There's a threshold of 8 dead bodies and the blood spilling disappears in about 20 seconds. Now I understand that Ryse first came out as a console exclusive and consoles have their limitations, but I'm playing this on PC. Console limitations are simply not relevant here. PCs have different configurations and you have new hardware coming out very frequently. If your machine can handle a great aftermath experience, you should absolutely have an option to see it. You have response animations on impact, a change of behavior for wounded characters, and execution animations. The change of behavior is a very cool feature. Heavily wounded characters will be walking a bit slower and holding their body. Now I do think that the wounded state as it is should have happened after the character took a hit or two, and when they are actually near death you should see something more dramatic. But it still is much better than the nothing at all you will see in most games. As for the execution animations, you have different animations based on the amount of people you kill at a time, and you have several environment-specific executions. The executions are cool, they are brutal and very well made. A thing I want to note here is the facial expressions. I usually don't focus on that in the Gore Reviews, but they are simply amazing in this game. What is lacking is some wiggling animations after the executions. You will see it sometimes when you execute more than one enemy, but those animations are very short and don't happen frequently. I'd suggest making the wiggling significantly longer and creating more animations for the aftermath of other executions as well. If you don't execute enemies and finish them with a regular attack, they will just drop. What I think could be done is sending those characters into a disabled state. They would lie on the ground wiggling in pain and you would have an option to finish them. You have response sounds on impact, enemies will react on pain, make sounds on death, and will comment during the fight. The impact sounds are pretty good. You have nice and brutal sounds for slicing, and you can hear the blood spill. The enemies' reactions, however, are not that great. Technically it's so there. They respond when you hit them, the sounds on death are pretty good, and they comment during combat. However, it just sounds mild and you will have quiet moments in the fight. Too many quiet moments in my opinion. The body damage in combat is very decent, the blood spilling mechanics are better than most games, and the animations are also pretty good. But the feeling I'm getting is that all of the attention is focused on the process, and the very moment a character dies, he loses any importance from the game's perspective. You can see it everywhere. From the very mild wounds on executions, through the lack of blood pools, and the disappearing of pretty much everything. The aftermath has been overlooked in every possible aspect. So the score for body damage is 12 out of 30. The score for environment is 17 out of 30. The score for animations and sounds is 19 out of 30. I give the feel a score of 6 out of 10. So this gives the Gore system of Ryse Son of Rome a total score of 52 out of 100. Despite all of the issues, and there are plenty of those, I was pleasantly surprised with the Gore. I thought it's going to be all about hollow flashy effects, but it really isn't. If the aftermath received proper attention, Ryse would be one of the highest scoring games in the Gore Reviews. So, can the Gore be at least somewhat of a redeemer to the otherwise unexciting combat? Yes, I actually think it is. I would not recommend buying this game at full price, but I definitely think that there is some gory fun to be had here. Hope you enjoyed watching the review. Let me know how you feel in the comment section, and if you liked the video, subscribe and share it with your friends. You can find the link to all of my Gore reviews in the video description. Until next time.